Reading out of the old reference guide to regulatory compliance on page 891, paper page 891, the interagency guidelines establishing information security standards is the topic. In response to consumer concerns about the security and privacy of financial information during a time when electronic banking was growing rapidly, Congress enacted Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act in November of 1999. In part, this law requires financial institutions to ensure that the security and confidentiality of customer records and information protect against any anticipated threats or hazards to the security or integrity of such records, and protect against unauthorized access to or use of such records or information that would result in substantial harm or inconvenience to any customer. The law also requires bank regulators to establish standards for depository institutions to develop systems and controls to implement the requirements of the law. The agencies issued the interagency guidelines establishing standards for safeguarding customer information in February of 2011. The guidelines require a written security program with internal controls, monitoring, and reporting to the board of directors. They became effective on July 1st of 2001. The guidelines require a written security program with internal controls, monitoring, and reporting to the board of directors. Whoa. They became effective on July 1 of 2001. All right, let's get back to the next paragraph. In 2004, the Fair and Accurate Credit Transactions Act mandated rules for disposing of consumer records. These rules became effective on July 1st of 2005, but the mandatory effective date for the service provider portion of the rules was July 1st, 2006. The guidelines were amended to reflect this change. With this change, the name of the guidelines was also changed to more accurately reflect its true focus. Coverage. All depository institutions and their subsidiaries except for brokers, dealers, persons providing insurance, investment companies, and investment dealers. B. Customer information. That's covered is all non-public personal information about a bank customer, whether in paper, electronic, or other form. NPPI. Consumer information includes any record about an individual, whether in paper, electronic, or other format that is a consumer report or is derived from a consumer report and maintained or otherwise possessed by or on behalf of the bank for business purpose. And under consumer information that's covered, examples of consumer information is consumer reports, information from a consumer report that a bank obtains from an affiliate, information from a consumer report that a bank obtains about an individual who applies for but does not receive a loan, including loans sought by individuals for business purposes. Information from a consumer report that the bank obtains about a person who guarantees a loan, and information from a consumer report that a bank obtains about an employee or a prospective employee. Number 3 examples of items that are not consumer information is aggregate information derived from a group of consumer reports, blind data such as payment history or on accounts that are not personally identifiable. Letter D under coverage is service providers that have access to consumer information and that may dispose of consumer information must have agreements with the bank that are in compliance with these guidelines. Subpart 2, requirements. A, implement an information security program. Let's just read them all. B, develop the program. Well, that's it. Under implementing the program, we must write a comprehensive information security program and include administrative, technical, and physical safeguards. All parts of the program must be coordinated and must be appropriate to the size and complexity of the bank. Also, must be designed to ensure the security and confidentiality of customer information, protect against anticipated threats or hazards to information security or integrity, protect against unauthorized access to or use of such information, and D, properly dispose of customer information and consumer information. B, develop the program. The board of directors or a designated committee must oversee the development, implementation, and maintenance and approve the written program. 2, assign responsibility for day-to-day operation. 3, bank must assess risks before program is developed. A, B, or C. A, identify reasonably foreseeable internal and external threats. B, assess the likelihood and potential damage of threats. C, assess the sufficiency of policies, procedures, and systems to control the risks. And number 4, under developing the program, the board must create a written program that will manage and control the risks. I'm sorry, the bank does that. That would be hilarious. A, design a program to control identified risks. And B, adopt all measures the bank considers to be appropriate, including access controls on customer information systems. 2, access restrictions at physical locations. 3, encryption of electronic customer information while in transit and in stored systems. 4, procedures designed to ensure that customer information system modifications comply with the security program. 5, dual control procedures. And 6, segregation of duties. Roman numeral 7, employee background checks. 8, monitoring systems to detect actual and attempted attacks on or intrusions into information systems. 9, response programs that specify action to be taken when the bank suspects unauthorized access has occurred. And 10, measures to protect against destruction and loss of damage of information. Number 5, bank must train staff to implement the program. 6, bank must test key systems, controls, and procedures on a regular basis. 7, tests should be conducted or overseen by an independent third party. 8, bank must oversee service provider relationships, including A, exercising due diligence when selecting service providers. B, requiring service providers to implement appropriate measures to meet the program's objectives. C, monitoring service providers to confirm that they have satisfied their obligations. 9, bank must adjust the program as needed. 10, bank must report to the board of directors annually. 11, bank must develop, implement, and maintain appropriate measures to properly dispose of customer information and consumer information in accordance with each element of its information security program. Roman numeral 3, examination procedures. A, objectives. 1, ensure the security and confidentiality of customer information. 2, protect against anticipated threats of hazards to information security. 3, protect against unauthorized use of customer information that could harm or inconvenience a customer. B, examination considerations. 1, determine the involvement of the board of directors, including the approval of a security program that meets the requirements of the regulation. B, ensuring that persons responsible for overseeing the security program have the necessary knowledge and skills. C, ensuring that if there is more than one security program, they are coordinated across the organization. Number 2, under examination considerations. Determine the usefulness of management and board reports. A, do they provide information on the effectiveness of the security program? B, do they provide information on the risk assessment, risk management, and control decisions, monitoring, testing, and recommendation for changes? And 3, evaluate the risk assessment program. Determine the following: how the institution assesses risks to the customer information system and non-public customer information. And B, whether the institution has evaluated the risk to the entire customer information program. Alright. C, whether personnel with sufficient expertise were used to evaluate the risks. D, whether the risk assessment is part of a formal risk assessment process with timelines and milestones. E, how the institution identifies and ranks its information assets and how this process is used in risk assessment. Under examination procedures 4, assess the adequacy of the risk assessment process. A through D, determine whether the institution identifies all reasonably foreseeable internal and external threats to information security. B, determine whether the institution supports its estimate of potential damage posed by the threats. C, review the institution's existing controls to mitigate risk. D, determine whether the institution uses test results to support its assessment of risks. 5, under exam procedures, determine whether the institution identifies and prioritizes its risk exposure, and creates a mitigation strategy, including whether the institution promptly acts to mitigate risks that pose the threat of material loss. B, how the institution demonstrates that its mitigation strategy was reviewed by appropriate officials. C, whether the mitigation strategy provides guidance on the nature and extent of testing. D, whether the risk assessment includes vendor oversight management. And 6, evaluate the accuracy of the program to manage and control risk. A, review internal control policies to determine whether the bank has considered the following controls and adopted appropriate ones. That's Roman numeral 1, access controls. Roman numeral 2, access restrictions at physical locations. Roman numeral 3, encryption of electronically transmitted customer data. Roman numeral 4, procedures to ensure that system modifications are consistent with the security programs. Roman numeral 5, dual control procedures, segregation of duties, and employee background checks. Roman numeral 6, monitoring systems and procedures to detect actual and attempted attacks on the information security system. Roman numeral 7, response programs specifying action to be taken when the institution suspects unauthorized access. Roman numeral 8, measures to protect against destruction, loss, or damage of information for potential environmental hazards or technology failure. 7, determine whether the bank staff have been adequately trained to implement the program. Obtain a list of all training sessions. 8, determine whether key control systems and procedures of the program are regularly tested by independent persons. A, assess whether the testing is consistent with the risk assessment. B, assess whether tests that are conducted are reviewed by independent third parties or independent staff. C, assess whether management reviews test results promptly and whether management acts on the test results. 9, assess methods used to oversee service providers. Within 9, A through E, determine that institution used due diligence in selecting a service provider. B, determine what information is provided to service providers. C, provide copies of all service provider contracts. D, if the institution monitors service providers, then determine whether the contract provides for sufficient reporting to the institution and that the institution adequately controls the information supplied to the service provider. And E, review the financial condition of the service providers. Number 10, determine that there is an effective process to adjust the program. A, determine whether the appropriate person has been assigned to oversee adjustments. B, review the procedures to ensure that when the institution makes changes, the information security program requirements are included. Changes include technology changes, new software patches, and so forth. 2, new attack technologies. 3, new attack methodologies. 4, sensitivity of information, threats. 5, 6, upcoming changes to the institution's business arrangements, such as mergers or acquisitions. 7, upcoming changes to customer information, such as new connectivity. And C, determine whether the institution has appropriate expertise and controls to affect changes in the program. All right, that's the end of that section.